Hello and welcome to another anime lore and theory video. I'm Shergok, your host, and today we are going to take a closer look at who are the smartest characters in all of Overlord and what their areas of expertise look like. But before we're going to take a closer look at any of this, let me quickly thank my Patreons for supporting this channel, as well as say thanks to all users of the YouTube thanks function for making one-time donations. And with that said, let's get to the topic at hand. And the first character I want to mention is somebody who didn't even exist in the original web novel, namely the lady with the prominently displayed outlet eyes, the bride who remains in her wedding dress. The one and only Albedo, and Albedo didn't just not exist in the web novel, just like her sisters didn't, but she also took over the management of the Grey Tomb, in order to free up Einsulgon, and in her position as the leader of the Floor Guardians, she is effectively Einsulgon's second, and she became the second most important person in the Sorcerer Kingdom of Einsulgon as well, as its prime minister. And she possesses a demonic intelligence, which makes her absolutely unmatched in her role. And with her demonic intelligence, she is absolutely unmatched in her fields of expertise, meaning handling labor, organizing an economy, finances, and internal affairs. And she is one of the most brilliant domestic politicians in the entirety of the New World. And out of nothing, she created an enormously effective bureaucratic apparatus and forged the various territories of the Sorcerer Kingdom, both officially and unofficially, into a functioning economic and political unit. And she did all of this while simultaneously managing a secret plan that Einsulgon apparently is to be deprived of his friends if they ever show up. And again, all of this is done so that Albedo will eventually get Einsulgon all for herself. So in other words, Albedo accomplished every single one of her brilliant feats as a side hustle, because her main focus is, and always has been, more manga. And next, we move on to the military equivalent of Albedo, Demiurge. Blessed with demonic wisdom and a razor-sharp intellect as well, Demiurge may not be as specialized in domestic and financial policy as Albedo, though that doesn't mean that he isn't brilliant in those areas either, but his true speciality is the military strategy. He is a brilliant logistician who can not only conduct and organize entire wars with ease, but also predict the outcomes of his battles and the reactions to them with such a precision that every single act of cruelty or injustice committed by his demonic legions generates reactions that ultimately serve his true plan. His real intentions always remain hidden behind countless troops and intricately layered plans within plans and strategies. The entirety of the invasion of the Holy Kingdom clearly showed that even a total victory over a foolish arch-enemy was not even the main goal of his campaign. The true objective was always the corruption and conversion of this arch-enemy, this beacon of hope and light, to the ideology of the Sorcerer Kingdom, even if that required the sacrifice of an entire army and the sacrifice of an otherwise brilliant victory. And next up is the human equivalent of Albedo, or Demiurge, or rather a spiritual one, who up until volume 14 or season 4 was still hidden in the skin of a human princess. Despite being a powerless and largely penniless third-born daughter in a royal family, torn by succession conflict between the first and the second-born son, she still manages to gather extremely powerful allies and amass arguably much more power than either of the candidates for the crown ever could. For example, Princess Renner managed to convince Lachius, a powerful and influential noble, to become her friend, her true friend, who is actually willing to sacrifice her own life in order to fight with her, to the very last breath. And she's also the one who is the leader of one of two adamantite ranked adventurer teams, at least for the advent of Momon, which are considered the elite among the anti-monster mercenaries, since again, before the advent of Einsulgon, this was basically the sole profession that adventurers were. They didn't explore foreign nations or strange coasts, no. They were anti-monster mercenaries, fighters, battle-hardened veterans that would face monsters that normal soldiers wouldn't dare to stand up to. And on top of that, this team also contained 2 former assassins of Iyangia, and the very elite of these assassin orders I want to add, and Evil Eye, aka Landfall, aka a legendary vampire princess. And on top of that, Larkius is also the niece of Azud-Aindra, the leader of the 2nd Adamantite-ranked adventurer team in Rias Ties. And each of these teams is far stronger on their own than even the strongest warrior in the kingdom, Gazev Stronov, and his warrior troop. So in a battle between the king's elite troops and Azud-Aindra alone, it would be clear that Azud would have come out as a victor. In other words, this officially powerless princess indirectly commanded the strongest elite force in the entire kingdom through manipulation and the selective disclosure of information. And she could also convince Brain Anglos to join her own side after the end of Gazev Stronov. And Brain Anglos eventually surpassed his former rival. So again, this was another very well-made choice. And her internal politics were primarily designed to make her appear as though she was failing and needed comfort, so she would be then comforted by her bodyguard Climb, with whom she was, let's call it, madly in love. But anyway, just again as a side hustle, Renner's political brilliance vastly improved her own position, despite it being designed to mostly fail. Renner, by strengthening the position of the ordinary people, the common folk, not only created an image for herself as the Golden Princess, someone even the adventurers, again, essentially glorified but very powerful armed mercenary bands openly praised and wished for as the ruler of the nation. But also she solidified her own position and weakened the many powerful noble families by binding the people closer to the crown and giving them rights and privileges, because every single right and privilege of the now common people, it came obviously at the expense of the very exalted rights of the nobility. And she even succeeded in drawing the attention of Demiurge and Albedo, who both recognized her as a brilliant and therefore useful tool for Nezarec, and that in turn demonstrated the monstrous intellect of the Golden Princess. And it was only because of her usefulness and intelligence she was able to be granted immortality and eternal youth when she and Climb were transformed into demons, or rather elevated to demonhood. In other words, Renner had the intelligence and the ability to earn her immortality, an enormous feat in a world where good people are rarely rewarded for just being good. In other words, Renner really had what she needed to get on top, and I'm not just talking about Climb. And now we move on to the last and the most normal of the highly intelligent beings in the world of Overlord, Emperor Jircniv Rune Farlord El Nix. And he is the most brilliant among the normal rulers, who are not on the level of Demiurge and Albedo. And still the man managed to untangle and dissolve the entire web of noble families and power struggles that plagued the Barut Empire, just like it did in the Kingdom of Rias Ties. And he did so, as if untying the Gordian knot. Jircniv cleaned house on the rise to absolute power, by purging the nobles to a preemptive war. Or so they were told, because it was their own chivalry that in the first of the annual wars impaled itself on the spears of the Rias Ties army. Now stripped of their military strength and publicly blamed for the defeat, he could purge the once powerful noble houses, reform the military, centralize it, and redirect its focus entirely on himself and his position as the emperor. And he also succeeded in stimulating economic growth and prosperity, just like Renner succeeded in stimulating, you know what, let's not talk about it, and he wasn't even above asking for help. He listened to Fluder Paradane's advice, until Fluder Paradane's eventual betrayal. And also, on top of this, every single drafted law from Renner that he found useful, which were basically all of them, once smuggled to him out of the Kingdom of Rias Ties by the many informants he had within its noble elite, was implemented to further strengthen the empire. In other words, Jircniv was able to put his ego aside and serve a greater cause when it benefited the land. and he also ended the noble privileges, rewarded merit and success instead of status and family name. And he also built an equally competent and well-functioning bureaucracy. And he also dabbled into the forbidden arts, into the use of undead as laborers. Something that Einsulgon would also implement, although way more effective and on a way larger scale. But still, he had the right idea. And those were basically the most brilliant and cunning characters in all of Overlord. Excluding of course Climb and Philip. And Eclair, who shouldn't be forgotten. But both of them also have their own videos already. And with that said, now it's your turn. What do you think about the video, the topic and Overlord? Let me know it down in the comment section. And while you type, I say thank you very much for watching, thanks to all of my Patreons for supporting this channel, and as usual, I say my special thanks to Arder Daddy Arder, ASK, Bad Guy Ye, Bad Burrito 316, Beezer, Ben C, Brandon S, Brandon D, Chrissy, Crowley0221, Sia, Crystal Prime, Dead Slime, Death is Mercy, Deathless Dragonlord, Demon Xenomorph 1987, Devin Downen, Ding Dong, Din Pep, Dragonlord Placidus Saxophone, Duckwagon, Dunkler Krieger, Dystopia, Dystopia II, Enigmatic Unicorn, Feralchivan, Guy with That Head, Hector Marino, Hoss, Haster, Jacob G, Jana B, Jason, J. Morris, Chromius, Kyle R, Lee K. Long, Legendarius, Le Louche Britannia Viffy Mustache, Lexus Fox, Lord Nishikian Rai, Lord Touch Me, Loverazor, Merowek, Mr. Shoes, Mr. Tweaker, Michael R, Michael Y, Nope, Oh Hell No, Normal Toad, O'Kill, Overlord General Gasper, Paddy Pentum, Personage, Ruru, Primus 11, Rhinomere, Q&A Caracos P, Shergox's Daddy, Shadow Lightning Wolf, Shrine Keeper, Sir Axolotl, Super Tier Magic Batista Bomb, Supreme Cheese, Staris, Ted, Texas Deer, The Orc Warboss, Rocket Smasher, T.E. Wang, Vash Hawkeye, Vegito27, Venture Fanatic, Wilhelm, Xenokai, and Sonagon. Thanks guys. Anyway, have a nice day, and I hope to see you all again soon on my next video.